Hello, good people. You're tuned in to Tales from the Mennonite Heritage Archives, where we bring you stories about people, places, and events from Mennonite history. I'm your host, Dan Dick. Today we bring you the inspiring and resilient life story of Susana Miller, a woman who endured family tragedy and hard times, but rose above it all to find joy. Susana's life unfolds like a roll of fabric, layer upon layer, rich with color and texture, woven with movement, sorrow, and joy. She left behind a collection of her own poems written in German, English, and Low German. Susana was born September 12, 1916, in the village of Rheintal, 3.5 miles southeast of Plum Coulee, Manitoba. Her parents were Gerhard P. Dirksen and Maria Braun. Like most Mennonite children her age, Susana Dirksen Miller grew up on a farm and did what children did in those years, played outside and helped wherever they could. Susana was the youngest of 14 children in her family. Her earliest memories were rooted in a well-kept farmhouse. The windows had shutters to keep out the sweltering summer heat. Wild plum trees, heavy with red and yellow fruit, looked out from behind the summer kitchen, and Susana knew that stepping on the sharp thorns of those trees really hurt. The family's large farmyard held the house, barn, smokehouse, granaries, and a fine vegetable garden. Roses and poppies decorated the front yard. As the youngest, Susana grew up with Annie, who was just 18 months older. Their small hands collected eggs each day, and when their older sister Mary milked the cows, it was their job to hold the cows' tails to keep them from swatting Mary's face. The job could be messy. Sometimes a cow yanked her tail out of little Susana's grasp and swatted Mary's face. When that happened, Susana wrote, boy, was I in trouble. Susana and Sister Annie were constant companions. When Susana was only 7, the girls transformed the smokehouse, all black with soot inside, into their playhouse. They decorated the walls with pictures torn from old books and calendars, and played with their dolls for hours in their own private world. But a happy childhood can turn in a heartbeat. One hot summer day, their mother was hitching their horse to a wagon. She warned the girls to keep their distance. So the girls wandered over to where their older sister, Tina, was doing the family's laundry in a big iron cauldron full of boiling water and caustic lye soap. Next to the cauldron was a tub of cold rinsing water. Annie and 7-year-old Susana, wearing nothing but tiny tops, dipped their hands into the cold water, giggling as they patted their bare bottoms. Then, as happens with children having fun, their play turned into pushing and shoving, at first gentle, then harder, until Susana's shove sent Annie tumbling into the scalding cauldron of boiling lye water. Big sister Tina quickly pulled Annie out of the cauldron. Annie raced towards the barn, screaming in pain from the boiling water and chemical burns on her skin. She jumped into a barrel of cold water that the horses drank from, and then ran into the house. After that, the stoic Annie never cried again, and she never complained that she was in pain. Instead, she asked Susana to get her doll from the playhouse. As if pardoning Susana and relieving her of a lifetime of guilt, Annie put the shoe on the other foot by suggesting what might have happened if the girls had been in opposite positions. In a serene voice, Annie said, "If I had stood on the other side, I would have pushed you in. We were just playing." In the 1920s, it was customary to clothe the dead in white dresses for burial. Annie seemed to already understand that she would die, and said to Susana, "I'll be getting a white dress." Lying in bed, and until her last breath, she softly sang a hymn.
Grüß dich Gott, sieh, da bin ich nun, liebe Mutter, wieder heim. Greetings God, see, here I am now, loving mother home again.
Annie struggled to stay alive for another 24 hours and then got her white dress. She lay peacefully in her coffin. Black ribbons trimmed her white linens. Family and friends festooned her casket with blossoms from their gardens. Annie was buried in the family's flower garden. Not even a wooden cross marked her short life. After Annie died, her mother sang Grüß dich Gott. The song haunted Susana for years to come, especially when she caught herself singing it. Guilt deepened Susana's grief. She prayed in the way only a child can, begging for reassurance. In Susana's dreams, Annie told her again and again that she was not to blame. This was not the end of the family's trauma. On a cold February night in 1925, Susana and her older twin brothers were awoken and taken to their uncle's home. When they returned home, they heard a baby's cry, but it was not their mother's child. None of the adults spoke, and Sister Tina was nowhere to be found. Growing up, Susana eventually learned the truth. 16-year-old Tina had delivered a baby girl, but there were complications. Her father refused to let anyone call a doctor. He was afraid of the questions he would face. Like her younger sister, Tina wore a white dress trimmed with black ribbons for her funeral. Only a few guests attended. Susana said that people were not happy with what had happened. Tina was buried in the flower garden beside her sister Annie. Tina's baby lived for only 2 months. No explanation is given for her death, and she too was buried in the flower garden next to her young mother. The Dirksen family was constantly on the move, mostly in the area surrounding Winkler in southern Manitoba. By the time Susana was 13, she had earned a reputation as a reliable worker. Neighboring families, many of them Jewish business owners in Winkler, hired her to do housework. She was often paid in store credit rather than cash. On Friday nights, she earned 5 cents for turning off the lights and blowing out Sabbath candles in the synagogue on Winkler's 6th Street. Susana did all kinds of work. She scrubbed floors, whitewashed hen houses, planted gardens, polished hardwood, and did whatever was asked. Some households treated her kindly. Others refused to pay her. Some accused her of stealing, like the lady who asked her, "Susie, didn't you find money while cleaning?" "No," replied Susana. "If I find money where I work, I give it to the mistress." The mistress didn't seem to believe her and replied, "I'm sure I dropped a penny there." Susana loved to dance. She had one of her brother's old harmonicas and taught herself to play the song Golden Slippers. Then she taught herself to foxtrot. She played the harmonica and danced to her music, but the only way she could go to an actual dance was to tag along with her brothers Abe and Pete. When she was 16, Susana started dating Jake Miller, but she hardly danced with him because he was part of the band, playing guitar while his brothers played fiddle and organ. Her mother thought Susana was spending too much time with Jake. At age 18, Susana became pregnant. Jake accompanied her to the Home for Unwed Girls at the Salvation Army's Grace Hospital in Winnipeg, where she had to work for her keep. When she gave birth to Edna, a healthy 7-pound girl, Jake was notified and he immediately came to meet his daughter. It was only then that Susana confessed to the staff that Jake was not her stepbrother, but baby Edna's father. 2 days after Susana's 19th birthday, following a full day of threshing on the farm, Susana and Jake were married. They lived with Jake's parents in Winkler. At the time, Jake didn't have the $2 they needed for a marriage certificate. Years later, Jake met Reverend Earthall, who officially married them, and paid him the $2 to get the document. In the following years, Susana and Jake lived in many places. The couple often held down several jobs at once, moving wherever their jobs took them. Jake was a good farmhand and a fine carpenter. Susana could maintain a school building, do housework, garden, sew, work behind a meat counter, and do any handiwork that needed doing. They lived in houses with electricity, barns without electricity, and part of a school building. Much of their work was seasonal, and their pay often came in the form of room and board. Sometimes they were paid with second-hand clothes for their growing family. In 1941, Susana and Jake sold everything they had and paid $40 for a chicken coop, which became their first home. They moved it to Jake's parents' yard until they could buy a lot and move the chicken coop there. Jake fixed it up to make a home, but soon they moved again. The moves continued from Winkler to Emerson to Morden, in spite of Jake's debilitating heart condition that sent him to hospital 100 times, according to Susana. 10 years later, they made their boldest move, 1,350 miles east to Ontario. Jake hoped they could make a lot of money there. In Manitoba, fruit was a luxury they could rarely afford. In Ontario, families could work on fruit farms where their children could eat their fill. One night, when their daughter Marlene said she had a tummy ache, Susana asked her what she had eaten. 35 peaches, she replied. But next time I'll quit at 25. At age 45, Susana became pregnant with her 8th and last child, Bernice. It had been 10 years since Ike, her youngest, had arrived. The family was now living in Michigan, yet another stop in their quest for opportunity. Soon after Bernice was born, Tina and Jake returned to Winkler, leaving behind several of their adult children who chose to stay in the USA. When Jake died in 1987, their American children traveled to Manitoba for their father's funeral. Susana's grief over the loss of Jake was profound. Losing the man I had been married to for 53 years was a big loss for me, she said. I miss him terribly. But she remained stoic and found purpose in volunteer work. At the age of 77, Susana was named Activity Volunteer of the Year by the Manitoba Activity Therapists Association. In 6 years, she had logged 2,700 volunteer hours at the Salem home in Winkler. I have always loved old people, she said. There are many people to see, but sometimes I can't see them all. She kept visiting care home residents until her health failed. After a century of living, of love and loss, hardship and laughter, Susana passed away in Carbon in 2018 at the age of 101 years. The sources for the life story of Susana Miller come from a book by Susana's daughter, Tilly Van Sickle. The Mennonite Heritage Archives in Winnipeg holds the book. It's called Tonight I Will Dance, Memories of Susana Miller, complete with her poems and recipes. We learned about Susana's volunteer work from an article by Don Radford in the Pembina Times. To find out more about Susana Miller and see photos related to this episode, or to listen to this episode again, visit mharchives.ca. As always, we're happy to receive your comments and questions about this program via email to info@mharchives.ca.
Hello, I'm Archivist Conrad Stace. The Mennonite Heritage Archives is a community-supported memory center that relies on donations from community members like you. To support this program and the preservation of Mennonite history, visit mharchives.ca and click on Support, or give us a call at 204-560-1998. Thanks also to our partners, Canadian Mennonite University, the Centre for Transnational Mennonite Studies, Mennonite Church Canada, and Golden West Radio.
The script for today's story on Susana Miller was researched and written by Eleanor Tronaboy, who also read the hymn lyrics. For our next episode on Thanksgiving weekend, we'll bring you a story by Gerhard Entz about the first harvest in Canada, which took place 2 years after Mennonites arrived in Manitoba in 1876. As always, thanks to the Tales team of Conrad Stace and David Klippenstein. We hope that your harvest and your gardens have been abundant this year. I'm your host, Dan Dick. Tales from the Mennonite Heritage Archives will be back soon with more stories about people, places, and events from Mennonite history. Thanks for listening.